Welcome to Keep Going, a podcast about failure and success, hosted by John Biggs. Every week, we talk to an amazing person about a time they failed and what they learned. And remember, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Welcome back to Keep Going. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show, we have Perry Atwell. He's a full-time lecturer at the University of British Columbia, and you're an author, Perry. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're in your office as you speak. So you're about to go lecture. Are the students are still in class, or is that over?
Yes, indeed. There's no rest for the wicked. Unfortunately, I teach summer classes as well, and so yeah. But it's a beautiful time to be around campus. Not many people around, and so it's quite pleasant.
All right. So why don't you tell me about Wisdom for Life? It's timeless insights for cultivating joy and growing your world, which sounds like something pretty much all of us needs at this point.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much. Just in terms of where it's come from. My original intention was to collect pieces of wisdom and just to remember them just for myself. I thought to myself, you come across great pieces of advice and then you think that's great, but then you forget about them and 5 years later you hear it again and you think that's great. And so I thought I'm going to start documenting these so to make sure I don't forget anything. Then my plan changed to this is something I want to give to my grandkids and to say that this is what Grandpa learned in his life. And so that it really expanded and it got bigger and bigger. I started giving talks and so on. And eventually it got to the stage where people were saying, you should actually put this together in a book. And I think you can get to a wider audience. And that's really my intention here is that the whole purpose behind the book is to try to help people. It's all to try to help people. Even the way the book is set up, the way it's got exercises and all kinds of reflections and so on. It's all there to help people to hopefully live a wiser life. I don't pretend myself to be really wise, but I do see a lot of patterns which I see repeated across generations, across civilization, just across industries. And I think it's worthwhile to note them and to also share those patterns. So that's really what I think that the book is about.
I think this was a fairly common style of book, right? The Meditations was similar, where you basically put together aphorisms and favorite sayings and just thoughts. It wasn't really a journal per se, but sort of like a collection of things.
Yeah. What I find out there is that there's a lot of books out there with things like quotes and so on. They're just full of quotes and they're full of repeated wisdom, so to speak, over the years, which is fine. The thing which I think makes this book unique is that I also put in a lot of personal commentary and personal examples to try to deepen the understanding of these concepts. So yeah, there's a few quotes in there, but the majority of the book is more so experiences and really how do all these things connect. So we're trying to take things a little bit further.
So tell me about some of the things that you put in there. The book's still coming out. It's coming out in July. Why don't you give us like a sneak peek of some of the things that really, I guess, moved you?
Yeah, so the book itself is organized in such a way that we cover all the different parts of your life. So if you think about money and business, we think about spirituality and faith, we think about love and relationships, friends and family, really just the whole spectrum of things which you need to consider. Your health and well-being is another one. And these are the different chapters. And so they're all designed to be read individually if needed. You can jump to any part you like, but you can also read it sequentially and get a holistic view. So what I'm trying to do is what I think about helping people. People are at different stages. People need help in different areas. Some things they're strong on. Maybe their relationships are good, but they're struggling at work. The book is designed to help people no matter what state you're in, no matter what area of life that you need some kind of help or support or some advice in. And it's really trying to hit the mark with a very wide type of audience. And I hope that people find a lot of usefulness.
And you had 4 strategies in the book that you talked about?
There's various strategies. There's various strategies in the book. I can go on into various directions. And it really, again, depends on what you're looking for.
Well, obviously, we're talking about this is fairly entrepreneurial audience, but it's also just anybody who's, I don't know, sitting in a cubicle and looking out the window and wondering, is there anything else going on, right? If we can do anything else. And also reading the news and discovering, and they're definitely not cultivating joy. You're up in British Columbia, so you might have a slightly more joy than we have down here, but you tell me.
Yeah, no, well, and that's part of the issue is that as humans, we're generally more attracted, or we're more on the lookout for the negativity rather than the positivity. And this is the reason why I think, a lot of newspapers, press, media, and so on, they focus more on the negativity because that's what people want to know. They want to know what to look out for.
Hmm.
Okay, be careful of this and so on, rather than focusing more on the positive and what could be. And I think this book also does a very good job of trying to be a little bit more positive for the future. When we think of negativity, when we think of bad things happen, and bad things happen to all of us, how do you take it? How do you take it? Do you look at it as being very down and something very negative and this is going to go worse? Or do you look for the silver lining? And it's hard to do. It's hard to do in the moment. It's very easy to look at something retrospectively and say, oh, yeah, we can laugh at that now. But in the moment, it's a completely different story. And I think those people who are wiser can bring their thinking and their feeling to those moments. Okay. So, it's fine when you're up on a mountain or you're on a beach to promise all these things about what you're going to do in your life. But when you go back to your day-to-day work and your day-to-day grind, that's when it becomes much more difficult. And that's when I think it's much more important to still have these ideas and to still have that way of thinking. What is important here? What do I really want to achieve? What's the bigger picture here? And what's really important? What matters? Who are the people I'm affecting, and so on? You just take that step back. On that same note, I don't think most of us really think about what is a successful life. What would be a successful life? When we're on our deathbed, when we look back, what would be something that we can be proud of? Most of us live day to day. We plan for the next little while. We do what we need to do for the next little while for work, but we don't really take that longer view. And I think one of the keys to being successful is to get into detail. To get into detail. So it's not just a case of having goals such as I want to be successful, or I want to be wealthy, or I want to be. Well, those are way too broad, and they're way too vague, and it's really hard to know even
Hmm.
when you get there. So instead, be specific. You want to be wealthy? Well, if you want to have a nice house, let's go into some details. What kind of house would it be? What size would it be? What would be the view? What would the rooms look like? How would you paint it? These details to me, are going to help you get there much, much quicker, because now you're engaging different parts of your brain, your imagination, and so on. And it's going to take a bit of part of your brain. So the thoughts are going to come to you when you're doing other things, because you're also got this in mind. So I think there's a lot of things that people can do which are deliberate, which can help them live better lives. The other part of this is also to think about what's in your control and what's out of your control. There are various things which are out of your control, and if you spend time focusing on them or trying to change them, you're not really going to get anywhere. You're not really going to get anywhere. So instead, think about what you can control, bring that into your sphere of influence, and then try to make a difference. Being sure that there is a bigger picture, there are things that we can't explain, and you will figure them out eventually, or eventually the truth will be revealed to you. But until then, you've got to have faith. You've got to have faith that what you're doing is right, and it's going to be right for the bigger picture.
Tell me a little bit about that idea of faith in yourself, right? So there's a lot of folks who have been knocked down by entrepreneurship, by building businesses, and just by life in general, right? How do you maintain that faith? It seems like you have a fairly positive outlook on life. Could be nature, could be nurture, could be your current circumstances. Why don't you tell us a little about how you got here?
Yeah, I think there's a few tips. I think there's a few tips which I think are critical. Firstly, it's your health. It's your health. Your health, your energy has to be very high. To me, very high achievers have extremely high levels of energy. You ask them for three things, they give you five. Okay, they want to go over and above. Those people who exceed in life are the ones who not only go over and above, they want to do more than what's expected. Okay, they have enough energy to do more than what's expected, and that's the key. If you're tired and you go home and you see an email which asks for three things, well, if you're tired, you're just about going to do the three things, if that. But if you're full of energy, you're not going to give three, you're going to give five. So this is the first point. You need to have extremely high levels of energy. And how do you do it? My way is to look after yourself from a health perspective. Food and drink, you just have to be careful about what you put into your body. But my biggest way of keeping healthy is walking. I do a lot of walking. I walk for 2 or 3 hours every day. I can safely say that virtually every great thought I've had in the last 20 years has been on that walk. Okay, has been on that walk. And so to me, it makes a huge difference. It grounds you. It gives you that sense of nature. When you hear a bird fly away and you see what it's going through and you think, wow, what am I worried about? What am I worried about? There's so many other things going on. And I'm worried about this silly deadline or this silly whatever. There is a lot more to it. And so I find nature always helps. It grounds you. It gives you that solace. It helps you get back to a very calm level. I find meditation, for example, is beautiful, but it's super difficult. It's super difficult. Trying to empty your mind for 5 seconds is super difficult to do. Over the years, I've tried it. I've had varying levels of success. But what I found much, much easier is just instead of thinking nothing, and instead of trying to empty your mind and think nothing, think one thing. And just keep on repeating that one thing. And this is the theory behind chanting and so on over the years, mantras and so on, whereby you keep on bringing your mind back to focus on one thing. And what I do when I do my walks, my first half of the walks are full of affirmations, which are training my mind. And the second half of the walk, I let my mind wander. But I find that second half of the walk, my mind is so refreshed. My body is refreshed as well from the walk and the oxygen. It's not too tired. If you can go running and cycling and so on, but it takes a little bit more out of you, whereas walking I feel I can do forever. But it gives enough energy and enough positivity to make me want to do more. And I think that's very important. So the first tip there, health, look after your health, make sure you've got enough energy. If when you have no reason to feel anything, how do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? Where 1 is you want to go back to bed and 10, you're bouncing off the walls. Okay, where do you feel? For most people, I think, from my experience, most people are at about a 5 or a 6 in normal life. That shouldn't be your aim. To me, your aim should be at a 9 or a 10 for as long as possible. And when you do something you really enjoy, you feel that way. You don't have to eat. You don't feel hungry. You just want to keep on going. And that's because you really enjoy it. And so that leads me to the second point. So first point, look after your health. Second point, do something you really, really, really enjoy. Something that you would do for free. Something that drives your passion, that makes you want to do it just for the sake of doing it and not because of the financial rewards or any other kind of consequences. If you do what you enjoy, you'll get really good at it. You'll go over and above. You'll connect with people who are also really good at it. You'll hone your skills, your energy, your passion will come across. Do what you enjoy. Do what you enjoy. The question I get back from many people is, sure, I'd love to do what I enjoy, but I've got to pay my bills as well. I've got to pay my bills as well. So to my view, the people who I mentor, I say, look, your main job has to be something that you really enjoy. If you're worried about the money and if you're worried about other things, there are other ways that you can build that money. A lot of people have side hustles. A lot of people have other investments. A lot of people do things like real estate. In Vancouver and here in British Columbia, real estate is the big one, the side hustle, because it's so cheap to build and to renew properties. And so you need something else which will then give you the finances that you need. However, it's about doing what you enjoy. To give my personal experience, when I was younger, I always thought about teaching, and I thought teaching would be a great field and so on. But my thoughts were such that I would love to be a teacher, but I wouldn't want to do it because it wouldn't allow me to do the other things that I want to do in my life, all the traveling and all the other things I want to do. And what I feel is that almost life keeps on knocking on your door at some point. And I've kept on having these opportunities, and then all of a sudden I became a teacher, not because it was all planned, but almost because it was my calling. And even now, I wouldn't say I enjoy 100% of my job. I wouldn't say that. There's still some parts of my job I don't enjoy. But the main core of it, standing there in front of people, 80% of my job, I absolutely love. So that's the second thing. First, you've got to be very healthy. Second, you've got to do what you really enjoy. Thirdly, I would say you've got to let go. You've got to let go. You've got to make space for new things to come in your life. And you've got to let go. And sometimes that's really hard to do. Whether that habits that you've got used to, sometimes it's people. Sometimes you've got no choice, but sometimes there's people who've just been holding you back. The way I see it, if you're the smartest person in the room, in nearly every room you go into, you're going into the wrong rooms. You're going into the wrong rooms. Likewise, if you are the most accomplished person in every room you go into, you're going into the wrong rooms. Okay, you have to think beyond. You have to think about letting go of maybe what's got you to where you are, and then thinking about what's going to get you to the next stage. And there's only a certain number of hours in the day. What's beautiful about all of us is that we all have 24 hours. We all need some sleep. We all need some food. We all, what else we do in that time really defines what our lives are like. But you've got to let go. You've got to make space for it. I do the same thing with clothes. Anything I haven't worn for 2 years, it's gone. It's gone. What's the point? I can keep on saying to myself.
What about my old Bob Dylan T-shirt from 1997?
If that's sentimental reasons, you keep it. Sentimental reasons, you keep it. But otherwise, if it's just a piece of clothing, you get rid of it. If it's something you're never going to wear, just leave it. Give it to someone else. Let's start some ripples. You don't know where it's going to end up. I remember looking at the local newspaper, and I saw one of the guys there who was wearing one of my old jackets. And it just felt so heartwarming. I'd given it away to the local thrift store, and I saw it there. And you can recognize, your jackets and your cars everywhere. And it was fantastic. And you thought, wow, you know what? I've actually made a difference there. That could have been sitting in my cupboard, and it would have been, but instead it's gone somewhere else. Someone else has used it. It's provided some more value. Beautiful. I firmly believe we're all connected. We're all connected at some level with God. So if you hurt someone else, you're actually hurting yourself. But if you help someone else, you're also helping yourself, or you're helping the bigger picture. And I just love that whole concept. So you've got to learn to let go of some things to allow other things to come into your life, including people, habits, clothes, whatever it is. And lastly, what else do I say? The last thing I would say, just in terms of a strategy, in terms of applying the wisdom, is just to think that is to take it to the next generation. You come up with all the knowledge, you come up with all the ideas, experience that you've had in your life, but it stays with you. And so what can you do to help the next generation and people in the future? And I think the book is one of the things that drove me on with the book, in terms of, look, if people are still reading, you die, but your legacy or whatever you write, or when you help other people, that lives on. And so, hopefully people will still be finding the value in many years' time. And so given that, I think you want to think about what is the lessons? What are those lessons? What are those universal lessons that are still going to be there in 10 years' time, 100 years' time, maybe even beyond? And just thinking about, is there any ways that you can get those lessons a little bit wider, help more people? The more value you can bring to more people, to me, that's a much more fulfilling life. And that's the kind of thing I'm going to look back at, for my deathbed. I don't really care about, did I spend an extra 3 hours in the office? But I will care about, did I help more people? Did I see more light bulbs going off? Did I make a difference in people's lives around me? And if you do that, I think it brings back a lot of meaning into life. Because when I think about people who feel they're in a dead-end job, okay, it's not a dead-end job. It depends how you frame it. Some of the happiest people I know are cleaners. Okay, they're cleaners, but they think they're making a huge difference. And so a lot of it is it's the lessons, it's the voice that you say to yourself in terms of how much of a difference am I making. If someone had a high-paying job and they became a cleaner, they would probably beat themselves up about it, because they think, oh no, look where I've come down from. But the best cleaners I know, the happiest cleaners I know, are so proud. Look, I'm making a difference. I bet you these people would hate to go in this building if it wasn't clean. And, I'm doing my bit. And they don't feel the same way. The voice in your head is telling you, is really guiding a lot with how you feel. And so why not make it? And given that you can hopefully control some of your voice, why not make it positive? As an example, when you really don't know something, let's say you have a suspicion someone might have cheated you or did something behind your back, whatever, but you really don't know, and you're never going to know for sure, why even go there? Why even go there? Why even think? Just assume that it was something else, it was a mistake, and it's done, and it helps you let go. Otherwise, if you hold that kind of grudge, it's just hurting you. It's stopping you from letting go, and it's again taking up valuable space in your presence.
You've been a teacher for a while. You have, I think they mentioned you've taught 20,000 students. What are some of the lessons that you got from, first off, speaking with those students and learning from them, right?
Yeah, okay. That's a great question. What I find is, again, I find the patterns to be fascinating. The 20,000 students I've taught at very different levels, undergrads, masters, executives, all around the world, China, New York, in England, in Canada, and so the fascinating thing to me is, when all these places and all these different levels, there are still so many similarities in terms of the people who do really well and the people who don't do so well. As an example, one of the most common questions I get is, should I concentrate on my strengths or should I figure out my weaknesses? Concentrate on my strengths or figure out my weaknesses. In my experience, from what I've seen with all these students and the people who've seen where they've gone on to, it's not even close. It's not even close. Focus on your strengths. Get your strengths, get them up to another level. Don't worry about your weaknesses. Your weaknesses, you'll figure out over time. You'll have people around you to figure it out. If you're not very good at numbers, don't worry. You'll hire a great CFO. But think about your strengths. People don't get promoted because they're a little bit good at everything. They get promoted because they're really good at something, and then they've got to figure out everything else. So focus on your strengths. Focus on your strengths. Some of the other lessons that I've learned: contribute. Say something. Again, the very best students are the ones who put up their hands, they challenge, they think about things from different angles, they bring in their own experiences and so on. They're actively engaged, as opposed to people who are just there and they want to get the grades and they want to do whatever. So there's some clear patterns between those who are really successful and those who are not. Those ones who are very engaged, they ask good questions, they're very curious. And they're constantly relating whatever they're learning to their own experiences, to their own life, and so on. So they're constantly doing that translation. What I also find is that the most valuable people out there are those who can traverse several different areas. Okay, so whether it's several different experience in different countries, experience in different industries or types of work, those people are the really, really valuable people.
Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit. You worked at Morgan Stanley. You worked at some bigger places. And I think there's something to be said for that experience. But what was the things that you learned to avoid by working there?
Question. I learned a lot about how you navigate the grapevine and the political jungle within an organization. My initial thoughts when I went into these large organizations was, look, you know what? I'm going to work hard. I'm just going to go to work. I'm going to work hard, and my hard work is going to make all the difference. Okay? I really don't care about all the other games people play and so on. It's not going to happen to me. I'm going to work hard and do it. What I found, somewhat to my surprise, but I shouldn't have been so surprised, was that there's some real experts in how they play those games. And political games, how do they build their alliances? How do they build their connections and so on? And I felt instead, the way I changed over time, instead of thinking that was a negative, okay, in terms of the grapevine and rumors and getting to know people and so on, alliances, instead of thinking of it as a negative, I realized it is very much a positive. And those people who try to ignore the game, they try to ignore it all and just try to do a good job and that's it, they typically get run over by the game. Okay, so it's fine to say, I'm not going to play that game. I just want to come to work and that's it. But those who ignore or pretend that the game is not being played typically get run over by the game. So what I learned a lot from those very large organizations is that you have to be aware. You don't have to play the game. You don't have to contribute to the game, but you do have to be aware that a game is being played. And there are a lot of things going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of alliances being formed, relationships. There's people who will get promoted or do things or get assigned for projects because they know they have connections and so on. You just have to be aware of that bigger picture. And it's something which I think has held me in very good stead for my future. I think I've been very careful in terms of the political games, but I haven't been let's just say naive towards what happens with the politics. I think that's one thing. I think the key thing with working with these big organizations, they teach you so many frameworks, and you work with some very smart people, which stays with you for the rest of your life. Right now, if it's a Friday and my boss says to me, you've got to work all weekend on this project and you've got 20 hours, I'll just get a big pot of coffee and say, okay, where do we start? You learn certain work ethic and certain discipline, which is fantastic for the rest of your life. And so I highly recommend that. Do the really hard things first and you'll benefit from it for the rest of your life. Same reason why you should exercise first thing in the morning.
Fascinating. What's the what should people be thinking about right now when they're entering in the workforce and they're might be despondent, right? We're looking at AI, we're looking at all these things. How do we survive?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a nice time, I must admit, to be entering the market. There's a lot of question marks. Geopolitical tensions, there's industries, there's just in terms of the economy and what organizations are doing. What I would say is that there is certainly a lot of hope. There is a lot of hope. What we typically see is the commentary on the negativity. We don't see, 95% of what's happening, which is all doing well and still going on very strongly. So that's important to bear in mind to try to get some perspective. Also, just to think about a little bit of a history lesson and just to think that, many of these things have happened before. There's been many recessions, there's been many wars, there's been many changes. The only constant really is change. It's the only constant that's there. And so given that, what we should be doing, instead of thinking about, being stubborn and just thinking about learning certain skills, it's more so about being adaptable and being ready for whatever happens next. And so in my mind, the advice I would give people is carry on your training, carry on your education, but make sure it's more so in transferable skills. Don't just learn the proprietary systems for your organization. Learn skills which are going to be useful if you go to any organization. So that's the first part. Secondly, don't be so pressurized about getting the perfect job straight off the bat. In my generation, like my parents' generation, they had 2 or 3 jobs in their life. My generation, it's more like 4, 5, maybe 6. The current generation, the current estimates are people are going to have 10 to 12 jobs, distinct jobs, and 3 to 4 distinct industries in their life. So the pressure of getting the right one straight off the bat, it's just not there. It's just not there. And so instead, try to do what you really enjoy and see where that takes you. And don't try to think about just getting a job just to pay the bills. Think about what you enjoy. Try to get a job in that field and then try to figure out the other parts of it in terms of your finances and so on. So there is a lot of room for optimism. There is a lot of, a lot of things going on around the world, a lot of positivity. Try to surround yourself with that positivity. You're joining forums, joining like-minded individuals and looking for growth and so on. There's a lot out there. It's just a matter of what you focus on. It's just a matter of what you focus on. I live in very close to downtown Vancouver. If I walk a certain way, I will pass a lot of homeless people and I can have a very negative start to my day thinking, oh my goodness, where is our society going? If I walk the other way, I have a completely different experience and I see amazing buildings and amazing progress and so on. It's just a matter of what you choose to focus on and what kind of message you keep on telling yourself. And so I think what makes the difference, the affirmations do, but also just who you surround yourself with. If you surround yourself with negative people, that's exactly what you're going to get. Surround yourself with toxic people, complain about everything, that's what you're going to get. Instead, surround yourself with good people, positive people who are going to that positivity is going to sort of seep into yourself as well.
All right. Well, Perry, this book is coming out July 14th. I want folks to go to Amazon, pre-order. It looks like it's available there. Wisdom for Life, Timeless Insights for Cultivating Joy and Growing Your World. I haven't even spoken to anybody who's done something like this. So this is really cool. I really appreciate you coming on here.
Fantastic. And John, it's been a pleasure. And I hope everything goes well for yourself.
Thank you. This has been Keep Going. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. Remember, Keep Going is entirely listener supported. If you're listening to this, please head over to keepgoingpod.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast for as little as $5 a month. This is a labor of love, and every little bit helps. Thanks for listening.
I was so lost, pacing back and forth for 27 months. I wouldn't have known how to love myself if you didn't break my